Good morning. I'm hoping you can all hear me all right. It's good. Okay. Well, welcome to Hokyoji's Sunday Dharma Talk series. This morning we've got Jushin Stephyn Butcher. He started his Buddhist journey in 1997, practicing in the Tibetan tradition under Khenchen Tsewang Gyatso. Several Dharma names later, he found his way to Hokyoji. We became a student of Dokai Georgesen. Jushin, which is abiding trust. All right. Received jukai from Dokai in 2013 and ordination in 2017. He works as a software engineer by day and teaches artificial intelligence at Johns Hopkins University by night, and resides in Cambridge, Maryland with his husband, dog, chickens, and garden. So, Jushin, welcome.
Thank you for that introduction, Heartman. I think I need to shorten it. It's Tsewang Gyatso, by the way.
Tsewang Gyatso.
Tsewang Gyatso, yeah. Khenchen Tsewang Gyatso. Oh, good morning, everyone. This is still not less weird. I'm actually used to lecturing on Zoom, but I don't find Dharma talks to be like a lecture, and so I would much prefer to be in a room with all of you. So you can do all those things they tell you about eye contact and looking around your audience and stuff. And the fact that the camera is up here and you're down here and we're not all together is still weird for me. I actually want to start this morning in the Tibetan tradition with the sort of what I'm going to call the Puzzle of Renunciation. So all of the traditions have teaching stories. This is a particular one that I'm going to have to say I didn't like to hear in the beginning. I didn't like this one a lot. And it starts out basically sort of the prompt here is there's no way you can keep the world and still keep your practice. This is what the precious preceptor Trungpa had in mind when he said to a certain monk, "It makes my heart glad, uncle, to see you walking around this holy place, paying your respects. How much gladder I would be if you did something spiritual." And when the monk, whose name is not given, goes on to try prostrations, Trungpa says, "I'm glad to see you doing prostrations, uncle, but it would be so much better if you did something spiritual." And so the poor monk goes on and tries meditating, and it's probably going to sound a little familiar to another teaching story in the Zen tradition. He tries his meditating, and Trungpa comes and says, "It's good to see you meditating, uncle, but why don't you try something spiritual?" And the monk, at this point, exasperated, says, "Well, what am I supposed to practice?" And Trungpa says, "Give up on this life 3 times and loud." So certainly over time, the renunciate ideal, the Shramana ideal has changed. It probably even wasn't really what it was with the first Sangha. There are bits and pieces of stories contained in the Pali Canon where, you might have this idea that the Buddha, is enlightenment, and he found a bunch of followers and they hung out in the forest and went from place to place and taught, and that was all it. But it's just, so one day he's sitting down with King Pasenadi, and King Pasenadi is talking along, and he goes, yeah, see all your followers over there? Yeah, some of them are my spies. One of his cousins caused a schism because he wanted to add 5 new rules for monks, including vegetarianism, and the Buddha said no. And he took 1,000 followers and went and followed and founded a rival sect that lasted until like 200 AD. His family was always getting in trouble. The Shakyans thought very highly of themselves, and when King Pasenadi asked for a Shakyan bride, they actually sent a slave girl to King Pasenadi. And eventually, when this deceit was discovered, the son, the product of the King Pasenadi and the slave girl, he basically took his retribution on the Shakyans and demolished Shakya. So these are kind of the things they probably don't tell you. And so, oh, and he also had to, between the, I guess the Kosalans, his mother's family and his family, the Katamas, he had to adjudicate a dispute over water. There was always problems with water. So the Sramana idea probably wasn't always what it probably, it wasn't that idealized view anyway. And certainly as Buddhism moved into different cultures where the itinerant beggars weren't really part of the culture, that didn't fly so well in, you know, that to varying degrees in China and Japan, Korea, and then eventually with the Tibetan diaspora in India, things changed. Certainly when I was hanging around the monks in upstate New York, the Tibetans, yeah, they were, you know, they were fully, you know, they were monastics, but they were involved in building the retreat center and purchases, and you know, they weren't somewhere off in the forest. And on that note, in the, sort of in the West, we have a completely different idea. So we're kind of raised with the everyone knows Aesop's Ant and the Grasshopper. So you have the ant and the grasshopper all summer long. The ant gets up every morning and he works and he works. He's putting away food for winter, and every morning the grasshopper gets up and goes, "Why are you doing that? Come out and play. It's summer. It's all so wonderful." And, you know, this goes on all summer, and then the leaves start to fall in autumn, and there's the first rains, and the grasshopper hasn't put away any food, and the ant has. And I don't know why they tell these stories to children. Some of these are pretty gruesome. It's kind of like Grimm's fairy tales. It's like basically, you know, the actual story is one bright day in late autumn, the family of ants they're finishing up, and the grasshopper comes with his fiddle and starts begging for food. And the ants say, like, why weren't you putting away food for winter? And the grasshopper says, "I was having a good time. I was playing music." And the ants say, "Well, if you're playing music, start dancing." It's like, well, this is really creepy. But certainly I don't think we're meant to be from renunciation, that we're meant to be the grasshoppers in this story. I think that perhaps in the 60s, people might have thought we were supposed to be the grasshoppers in that story from the stories I hear, when you know, a lot of Zen and the beatniks and that sort of thing was becoming very popular. It's funny how a lot of things hinge on prepositions. Last time I spoke, I talked about the difference between being in the world and being of the world. Being of the world, we're not separate from it anyway. In this particular case, the difference is there's a difference between living for the moment and living in the moment. So there's a difference of perspective there, where we're not, the call is really not to just, you know, do whatever, you know, even I don't even think just meditate, certainly in Mahayana Buddhism, and just live for the moment and say everything's going to sort of be taken care of. And it turns out I don't think that was really ever true anyway, because Kikon talked last week, and I thought he was going to go in a different direction last week, and I was or it was 2 weeks ago, I thought he was going to go in a different direction, and I was very worried that I was going to be scooped. But he was talking about the 12 links of interdependent origination. And I remember listening to a talk by Stephen Batchelor, and he was going over this, and I think he was talking about Tana craving. And I was sort of, I never really thought about the fact that in the links of dependent origination, pleasure and pain are not the problem. Those are further up the links. It's the craving and attachment that are the problem. Those are the real problem. That's the real cause for dukkha. And so I think that we have to be careful that Dharma practice is not meant to be some sort of spiritual Thorazine drip. There are great quotes, what do they call them? There are Zen one-liners, I forget the Japanese name. Things like, to cry and not getting carried away by tears, to laugh and not getting carried away by laughter. Another one, there's a student and a master, I think they're at a funeral, and the master is crying, the teacher's crying, and the student goes, "If it's all an illusion, why are you crying?" And the teacher goes, "Because it's such a sad illusion." And we have to be open to the possibility that there are going to be sort of happy illusions as well. There's going to be happiness in the illusion as well. It's not going to be that's all dour all the time. So I think the problems then are for attachment, for craving, to things, to results, to the future. And it's really sort of on results that I want to concentrate. There's a fun game I like to play, which is called Zen Master or Stoic Philosopher. A really good one is Our Life is What Our Thoughts Make of It. Zen Master, Stoic Philosopher. It was actually Marcus Aurelius, so Stoic Philosopher. But it sounds just like the Dhammapada, right? That's the first verses out of the Dhammapada. So here Seneca says, it's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. And I think a lot of it is wasted in the sense of worrying about the past and the future. But we have to do something. It reminds me. So like there's the two Katagiri Roshi books. One is Returning to Silence. The other one is You Have to Say Something. And then so basically the parallel is nothing turns out as planned, but you have to do something. You have to do something. And so what the sort of the problem here, I think, is that we get caught up in expectations. And I don't know about you, but I have a lot of expectations. I really like things to turn out the way I want them to turn out, or not turn out the way that I don't want them to turn out. You know, one of the sayings is the great way is not difficult for those without preferences. Well, you know, I have preferences. I like chocolate better than vanilla. And I don't think that's really asking us to, well, like, you go to the restaurant, do you want chocolate or vanilla? And it's like, well, I don't know. I don't have any preferences. You pick. I mean, that's kind of awful to put the decisions on other people. That doesn't seem very bodhisattva-like. Occasionally we run into people who are, you know, say, I don't know, we're easy, we don't care. And it's like, well, then, you know, you end up making the same decisions. Seneca said, nothing happens to a wise man against his expectations. So it's kind of an interesting way of looking at it the other way. So I would say the great way is not difficult for those with no expectations. Or you can look at the other way is, I never expect anything other than what happens. And this is hard. This is hard. I teach artificial intelligence. I start every semester gung-ho and ready for a new crop of students to learn. And I have, the course is very structured. I introduce them to the concepts as they come, you know, I'm building throughout the semester. There are prerequisites to my course. I assume people have taken the prerequisites. There's an email, please use this email. There's Blackboard, please check for messages on Blackboard every day. Please study this and this in this order and do that and do this. And I'll tell you, 80% of the people don't do it. And I get upset every semester. Somebody uses the wrong email. Somebody has clearly not bothered to read Blackboard where a question has been clarified or I've expanded on what I expect on a problem set. And you just sort of drive yourself crazy over these things at work. I have my boss. Your boss should never preface something like this anyways. I know you're going to say no, but will you please do this? And of course, luckily we're online these days, so I'm not in the office with them. When I scream, no, why? That's dumb. In this particular case, recently, we have clients and we coordinate their data on websites. It's hard to explain. My husband just calls it, you do www stuff. But some of the www stuff I do involves passwords and security. And I knew by reading the email that what he was asking me to do wasn't going to work. And he made me do it anyway to prove that it wouldn't work. And this is like that's just, why? And so it's really easy, I think, in the absence. I mean, and what I hope to think is it's better than it would otherwise be except for practice. But it is otherwise very easy to get wound around the axle on a lot of these things. And so there's always, you always come back to sort of, you know, there's renunciation and practice, and things don't go as you expect, and you're not supposed to attach to anything. And you just kind of want to go, if this is such an unmitigated disaster, why do anything at all? Like, why bother? Because why bother? And I think for me, it comes out of trust, my name, and out of the Kalama Sutta, where the Buddha in the, you know, the famous part of the Kalama Sutra is the first part, where Buddha's saying, don't do anything just because it's written of old or it's in books or wise people told you, that sort of thing. And everyone sort of quotes that one, but there's a second part, the second part of the Kalama Sutra. The Buddha basically says, look, when you die, maybe you go to heaven and that's it. But wouldn't it be nice to eliminate greed, hate, and delusion in this life? And he says, yeah, it may be that when you die, that's it. But wouldn't it be nice if you could eliminate greed, hate, and suffering in this life? And he says, yeah, it could be that you are reborn, but wouldn't it be nice to eliminate greed, hate, suffering in this life? So I don't find the teachings to actually be otherworldly at all. They're not, I mean, certainly there are elements of it in there, but the focus is clearly on eliminating, diminishing dukkha in this life. And so I think that's the answer to the question of why do anything at all? Because you can do something. It's not that life is suffering, it's life is suffering because, or life is dukkha because of this. And so if you do this, there is an antidote to that, and life is not suffering. But again, it's hard. Rousseau said, everywhere man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains. Now, he had sort of weird ideas about what that meant. He considered family, government, other people, everything to be the chains. There was kind of a very strange, made up hypothetical past that went along with that. But I actually had a professor when I was an undergraduate who had a different twist on this. He called it Hughes's first law, after himself. Everywhere people are born in chains, everywhere people are born free, but everywhere people are searching for chains. And then he elaborates and says certainty. So it's the certainty that's causing the chain. The search for certainty is causing bondage. Which is interesting because in the Search for the Noble Truth Sutra, the Buddha actually talks about the deer being bound and set upon by snares versus the deer being unbound and set upon by snares. So I don't know why, I always sort of thought that it was the snares, that like a renunciation is getting rid of the snares. Like, let's not have any snares near me, but it's getting rid of the bondage. Let's see, there's a story, and I think some of you will remember this. So I don't know why this story has stayed with me for a very long time. It's a story by Richard Bach, who wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull. He wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull in 1970, which is kind of before my time. He followed it up in 1977 with the book Illusions, Tales of a Reluctant Messiah. That was in 1977. But I don't think I was reading this kind of stuff in 1977. I think I was reading The Lord of the Rings because I was 14. But whenever I read the story, it has stuck with me ever since. And it comes back to me, and I don't know if it haunts, but I want it to haunt you a little bit as well. So I'm going to read you the short story. There's so much in here. It's probably all the Dharma talks. I looked online. There's no evidence that I could find that Richard Bach is anyway ever been a Buddhist. He started out as a Navy engineer. He loved flying. He's been divorced 3 times, but nothing about him being a Buddhist. Once there lived a village of creatures along the bottom of a great crystal river. The current of the river swept silently over them all, young and old, rich and poor, good and evil, the current going its own way, knowing only its own crystal self. Each creature in its own manner clung tightly to the twigs and rocks at the river bottom, for clinging was their way of life, and resisting the current, what each had learned from birth. But one creature said at last, I'm tired of clinging. Though I cannot see it with my eyes, I trust that the current knows where it is going. I shall let go and let it take me where it will, because clinging I shall die of boredom. The other creatures laughed and said, fool, let go, and that current you worship will throw you tumbled and smashed across the rocks, and you shall die quicker than boredom. But the one heeded them not, and taking a breath, did let go, and at once tumbled and was smashed across the rocks. In time, as the creature refused to cling again, the current lifted him free from the bottom, and he was bruised and hurt no more. And the creatures downstream, to whom he was a stranger, cried, "See, a miracle, a creature like ourselves, yet he flies. See the Messiah come to save us all." And the one carried in the current said, I am no Messiah, I am no more a Messiah than you. The river delights to lift us free if only we dare let go. Our true work is this voyage, this adventure. But they cried the more, Savior, all the while clinging to the rocks. And when they looked again, he was gone, and they were left alone, making legends of a savior. So there's a lot of that in there, though, that resonates, especially the last line, right? So the creatures, having seen someone free go by, go, you know, Messiah, and they start making legends about him. It sort of reminds me of Rinzai, Linji, who says, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. If you meet the patriarchs or arhats on your way, kill them too. Bodhidharma was an old bearded barbarian. Nirvana and awakening are dead stumps to tie your donkey to. The sacred teachings are only lists of ghosts, sheets of paper fit for wiping the pus from your boils. So he was a little graphic, as many of the Zen masters were, the ancestors were. But I really, it's really the part where the creature let go and was dashed against the rocks, and had to let go again and was dashed against the rocks, and let go and let go and let go. And finally it got easier. And I think that's ultimate, that shows that freedom is hard. This freedom that we're looking for is, that we aspire to, is hard, you know, even though, as they say, you know, it's closer than, it's like a fish swimming in the water. It's like a fish swimming in the ocean looking for water. So the freedom is that close, but it's still hard. And we have to ourselves try and try again. I'm channeling music today. There was like, so the first one was Janis Joplin, of course, Pearl. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. And then Frank Sinatra, we just need to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and start all over again. It's good to remember, I think, also that the Buddha, remember the story of his enlightenment, that once he saw the truth, he said, oh, wow, paraphrasing, oh, wow, this is going to be really hard to teach because this goes against the grain. This is so contrary to human nature. It's so contrary to our evolutionary psychology. It's going to be vexatious to teach people this. So I think sometimes as we practice, we have to be prepared to be sometimes vexed. But yeah, I just want to close by opening up to discuss what our particular sticks and twigs we cling to might be, and how do we keep letting go. Questions? Tim.
Unmute. Okay, so yeah, I think the crux of it that was very nicely put by somebody you quoted, that wanting certainty is kind of cause of our suffering, or I forget what the phrase was, but anyways,
Change,
in your stories about at work, I think, being asked to do a task that you know is going to fail. It reminded me at my previous employer, I worked there 10, 15 years, I don't remember, but you get a new supervisor in, and new supervisors always want to show that they're really smart and so they'd come up, look at this problem, we're going to do this particular change. And you'd say, many people would say, we did that this way before, years ago, and there were these problems with it. And they go, oh, no, 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 no. And so they do that change, and it would fix some things and cause other problems, the problems that we knew it had. And then they would leave, and a new supervisor would come in and go, look at these problems, we need to do this change. And you'd say, well, we used to do it that way not too long ago. And no, 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 no. So they make this thing, and it went back and forth like 4 times. It reminded me at a certain point of work period at one-day retreats in Iowa City, where one of the tasks, very Zen task, is sweeping the leaves off the sidewalk. But there's like this little channel between, entranceway into this church we were renting. And if it was windy at all, it was like just a cyclone in that area. So you'd sweep the leaves, and they'd just kind of come back while you were sweeping. And things look a little better by the time you were done, but 3-4 hours later, it probably wasn't much different. But you developed the attitude, I'm not sitting, my legs are getting some relief. I've got to do something for 45 minutes. This isn't too particularly difficult. And so you really weren't too attached to the outcome. It was just like, oh, it's so Zen, this is the process. In fact, this is kind of a cool Zen practice, because we know we're going to sweep these leaves and it's not going to affect anything. But we don't normally go out of our way to do that at home, to do some sort of task that we know is going to, not make any change. But at work, new supervisors coming in, we're going to be sweeping the leaves, and they're just going to blow right back. But it's like a trick. I'm getting paid, I have to be at work, I'll just do what they tell me to. But that trick often doesn't seem to work at home, because we're, then it's our free time, our spare, not free time necessarily, but, the limited hours we have to do all the things we want to do. But it seems to me that trick works at work. And is it just a trick? I personally think it's skill, because if whatever works to get rid of our getting upset about, here comes a new supervisor and we're going to do things the way we always did. Because there's coworkers that really get upset about that, and others that are more just like, it's a new warden in town, there'll be a new warden in a couple of years, the rules keep changing, we'll just do whatever. So anyways, those were my thoughts that came up to mind when you were talking.
Because it is, I see Henry here. I've spent a lot of time with Henry in the kitchen at retreats. And it's just so easy in that context to like, okay, we're going to wash dishes. We wash the dishes, we dry the dishes, we put the dishes away, we sweep the floor afterwards. But at home, it's like, nope, I don't want to deal with this. I'm going to let the dishes pile up. It does certainly seem that it has a lot to do with having a lot to do. A lot of other things to do, not being in sort of that simplified environment. Anyone else? While Tim was talking, I also thought about one of the things I've always thought that sort of gets left out is you can be sort of in the moment, but the moment still has a momentum. Moments are not uncaused. So you still have, you can be in the moment, you're going to be in the moment of what's going on. And it just goes back to how hard that really is to do that when you can be pulling weeds at Hokyoji, and it's like, oh yeah, we're going to pull weeds. But at home, it's, you know, we got to pay the mortgage, and I've got work, and I'm saving for retirement. I'm still paying off student loans, and trying to sort of manage all of that without expectations that it will all necessarily work out. you and then sometimes it's, yeah, it's just, it may not work out, and you have to be able to be okay with that. Or at least, you know, that's just a new moment. You're going to deal with that moment when it comes, if it comes. Hopefully it doesn't. Anything else? I did forget to say Happy Mother's Day to everybody, though. And I was going to talk about motherly sentient beings, but I thought that'd be kind of a cliche. So, but Happy Mother's Day to everybody. Mary?
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you this morning. A lot of things came up for me, Jushin, when you were talking, but you're in a work environment, and Tim was talking about a work environment, and I'm now retired. But I had, like 35 years as a registered nurse, mostly in a hospital setting, but not always. And I have siblings that are still in the work environment, and I remember how difficult at times the structure of the environment, the momentum of the environment that you're in. And if you're working in a hospital, it's a big organization with tons of rules and tons of, it's hierarchy, and it's so rigid and so uncompromising, and the rules and the rigidity of it, like, who's responsible for that? I don't know. I'm kind of thinking those administrators or who's ever making the decision, they have their own problems, and they have their own difficulties to be dealing with, to make decisions that other people have to follow. But it doesn't matter if you're working in the trenches, like I was as a nurse, or if anyone, whoever is meeting with and working with the patients, those folks are usually, whether you're, doesn't matter, you're an aide, you're a doctor, you're a nurse, you're a respiratory therapist, you're a physical therapist, you're a chaplain, those are the folks that are with the patients. And sometimes it was really, really hard to not be so angry with the people that made the rules that weren't with the patients. That didn't work, didn't interact with patients and patients' families, and the difficulty of all of the other things that go on in the hospital, the most important things, being with the patients. So what I did often was to come home and scream and yell and but I found, what is this? It's not, maybe it was a distraction, maybe it was refuge, maybe it was something, but when I actually was in a patient's room and I could be with a patient, not always, even crabby, off the wall, crazy people, I always found that, this is where I can find my place. I'm good here. And so I think, why do you stay at a job? You got to find, is there anything that's, giving you, and you're providing sort of this really intense, whatever it is, this intimacy, this, I don't know exactly how to explain it. It's like the reason that you're at that place for those amount of hours, which are tons and tons of hours, it takes up so much of your life. And I guess, I guess that's just my comment. It's always this really tough struggle in a job setting. But I felt, I guess I don't have anything more to say, but that's kind of a nurse's life, I think. Really, yeah, I don't know, being with people who are really suffering and, finding, I don't know, finding something there. So maybe I got lucky, because I'll tell you what, if I didn't have that, I'd be really miserable. That's all I have to say. But I'm retired now, so.
Oh,
What? Yeah, I still have.
she's retired, but she still has problems.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, there is that. There is that. I can certainly, I understand where you're coming from, because my husband does home-based care. And so you can add to that the complete lack of control over the situation where you're meeting the patients because you're in their homes. So he tells some wonderful stories. And I can certainly, my last job, my current job, there's 3 of us, a company of 3, which you would hope there would be fewer problems. But there, I had another company I just used to work for was global, and it is, you don't like the inertia. It's like you like, yes, this is why the Titanic sank, because there had to be a committee to get together and decide whether that was really an iceberg. So yeah, that's kind of a mess. Did you have a question, Yo? Or were you just?
I was just reflecting that I used to say, as Mary did, because I worked in the hospital too, do you see the smoke coming out of my ears? To say to my colleague. So I just wanted to affirm what Mary said, and then, default setting of like, what, okay, aware, heat, and being really stirred up. And then what is skillful means, like to have that reference, like, okay, this is what's happening. I'm getting stirred up. My heart is tight. La 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 la, that's going on. What does skillful means in this moment? So kind of coming back to that. And just like you said, Mary, the refuge in making contact, no matter how the patient was or the family was so alive. It was really alive. It wasn't avoiding or making rules that didn't support that contact. That contact trumped everything. So I was just totally vibing with you, Mary, with what you said. And then, like, okay, a renunciation right now, right here. What's that? How is there space in this moment? I'm watching myself, all the layers of reactivity based on my own conditioning, blah, 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 blah. I'm just seeing it all in the moment, but like, is there ventilation in there someplace? That was trippy and exhausting. But like you said, getting smashed on the rocks and then being lifted up and then smashed and then lifted up and just acclimating to that. Yeah, it's hard work. no escape.
No escape. And I mean, it happens for, I mean, I think, especially during the pandemic, I think it comes to light how critical a role healthcare workers play in our lives. But also, I mean, everybody else, we tend not to, when times are good, to think about the contributions of, you know, farmers and tailors and all the people who make our clothes and grow the food and chop down trees, because that's why plywood is $100 a sheet plus right now. And so that's a whole nother topic about just the interconnectedness and value of everybody and their contributions. But yeah, Tim.
Yeah, Mary, thanks for sharing that. I thought that was a really good foil to what I was talking about, because in my examples, you know, the boss supervisor comes in and does something that we've done before that's failed, but it's just market research, or it's just the mail. Here you're dealing with people. So it's a totally different situation. And I had a friend who was looking at a career change from secretary, and she did an internship at the psychiatric ward on a hospital floor, and she loved it. She basically went around, I think part of it was suicide watch, but kind of went around, made sure everything was going fine. She visited with the patients. She loved it. She went and got some sort of nursing degree. It may have been the full nursing thing. And then she started working there, and she hated it because she never had time to visit with the patients ever. It was medication, check-in. There was no interpersonal contact whatsoever, totally different than the internship. And as soon as she had her college loan paid off, she left. She was never able to do what you were able to do, which is in the narrow space that they give you for that interpersonal contact, you maximized your value and effort there. And that's a really neat way, really skillful way to deal with that sort of flawed, you know, rules and regulations in a, you know, when you're supporting other people. So anyways, I'm glad you were able to do that. She wasn't, kind of sad, but that's it. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
So I guess I'm on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, trying to get a career job. I think this has to go back to what Jushin was talking about for like attachments and clinging, where it was like a month and a half ago, I had 2 interviews for a position in Minneapolis. So I was like, I was thinking a lot about, okay, if I get this job, I'll have my plan, at least for the next couple of years. It'll be set. I don't have to worry about it. And then just because things can happen, basically they said, oh, we basically changed the position and then hired based on the new position, which I didn't know about till they told me. A couple months later, or just after the second interview. And then and I was thinking before, like when I was going through the interview process, I was like I was thinking like, oh man, that would really suck if I didn't get it. So like that expectation of, like, I guess I was scared of not getting it, but you know, I lo and behold, I didn't get it, and I'm in that current position now, and it really hasn't been that big, you know, it's not as scary as I thought it was going to be. I think it's something I try to remind myself, and not even with just a job search, but in general, or just with this practice, is like, am I scared of what I'm attached to? Like, is it an image, or is it something that's actually like here in the world that's going to happen? And like, I have an interview on Monday, and it's like, while I'm excited for it, I'm not really attached to where I think it could go, because it's just all really, it's just an image, I would say.
I definitely feel for you. I mentioned this last January, January 21, is the first January in 6 years that I have not been looking for a job. Simply because I tend to work for startups, and startups don't all make it, like, you know, you see on the news. And there are layoffs and people change their minds. So yeah, interviewing is really, you know, it's like, what am I going to do? I don't have a job and I got to interview, and you get a job and you like, it's the worst type. I mean, it's like dating. It's like, you know, are they going to pick me? Please pick me. But, you know, like, and then you take the job and you go, wow, this isn't what they advertised when we interviewed. So yeah, you just have to learn to roll with it all. And that's kind of what you know, I guess that's ultimately what the practice is just rolling with it all. Because I still got a while before I can retire. You fun retired people.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jushin,
Thank you.
for your talk. Let's see. Next week we got Tim Masajek is going to talk about. Is that right, Tim? Are you up next week according to the website?
I think so.
May 16th. Zen practice is to become an ordinary person. I can go with that. It's tough being an ordinary person. But, anyway, thanks so much. I was a little tardy getting things together today. Let's see. It is Mother's Day, and the weather is beautiful. And thank you all for showing up, and I hope to see you again next week. So take care. Really nice to see you all. Thank you.